Okay. So good evening, everyone. I'm Diana. So the third time of my introduction. It's my honor to welcome you all to the second session of Leader for Young Leaders. And my journey connects project management, marketing, and sustainability with a strong commitment to women's empowerment. And I do believe that leadership is not only about progress, but also about equity. So making sure that women have an equal voice in shaping our future. So I'm very excited to be one of your hosts tonight.
Yeah, okay, that's my turn. Hello, everyone. I'm Janine. I'm really happy to be here with you tonight as your co-host. And I come from an international law background and currently work as a research assistant, focusing on business and human rights. Beyond that, I care deeply about peace building and equality. And I believe true leadership means creating space for every voice to be heard. And together with Diana, I'm excited to guide our conversation on leadership, sustainability, and how Priti's journey can inspire the future of women's voice.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Jenny. We are so honored to welcome our guest today, Priti Goyal, founder of Prismara Consulting Group, and her journey has taken her from India to Europe and to the Middle East, transforming her from a corporate leader to a female entrepreneur. She's a true advocate for global careers, gender equality, and digital transformation. Priti, thank you so much for joining us today. Please start by sharing a little about your journey with our audience. Thank you.
So, born and brought up in a really small town in India. It's called Vilai, probably the closest you would know is it's really in the center of India, not near any of the metropolis. So while growing up, I think I'd never imagined to be going working for Ali and having a 20 years career in Europe or going to Oxford and being able to fund that education myself. I really grew up in a middle class family with the with I think dreaming big was not really something which was ingrained, but something that I did get as part of my upbringing was really good education. And also that is a town that's like sort of the expats within India, meaning like people from all over India, different states, came to set up. It has the biggest steel plant in Asia. What that meant was diversity is something I didn't really have to think, like whether it's food, culture, like it did give me the curiosity about learning and diversity from the very beginning of my life. And I think that really played a major role in the journey that I think you're going to ask me today about. That is something that became my strength, to always be curious, to always find value in difference in opinions and the diversity behind it.
Wow, thank you, Priti. I heard that you mentioned you went to Oxford University in England, right?
That's correct. I did my
Wow.
master's from University of Oxford.
What was the motivation for you that you wanted to study in Oxford? Like, could you give us like maybe the tips for chasing your careers?
So when the decision that I made for pursuing my master's actually came after 20 years of my career. So I was already in a leadership position. I was doing well in my career. And also in sports or fashion, education does well or to your resume only until a certain point. Like it's so like going to Oxford, I knew that is not going to give, let's say, an uplift in my remuneration or career. That was not the intent. The reason I went to Oxford, and I would do it all over again if it were for free, but I think one of the biggest reasons I went was it was a sort of a calling in the sense, if I don't go, I would be limited in my capacity, intellectual capacity, exposure, my thoughts. Like, each one of us want to change the world for good in a certain way, but the organizational level associations that you will develop along the journey will give you the platforms and enable your thinking by giving you those unlocks. So in certain ways, it was like, okay, my power as an individual doesn't have the direction, and I don't know um, how to do it, but I know that if this is where everyone like me is going to find that. So how it helped me, that was the intent, and looking back, that was the right choice for two reasons. One, it did connect me to very diverse industries and the best of the minds across the world, which I would not have interacted with in that level of depth had it not been there. The second, it allowed me to go one step deeper into self-discovery of, when we say we want to create and lead with impact, who are we as an individual, as a leader, and to really discover that, I think these were the two, let's say, inspirations to what in the sense of, you ask me what are the tips, I would say learning for sure, but I think if you want to pursue, do pursue it at a point where you are ready for the learnings and the education that you will get. I think we need to know when we are ready for it. In my case, if I had done it, let's say 10 years earlier, I had a lot of things that I needed to learn first, or the financial pressure I would have had at that point instead of. So, like, finding the right moment to do things in your life, I think that is the only tip. There's no right or wrong in this.
I really love the idea you said to self-discovery, like to know,
For sure.
to yeah, not by just learning, but to actually know, get to know yourself and really know what you're doing and what is the reason you're doing this. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, how you find that it's the right moment to just for you to make the change. So, like, having lived and worked across India, UK, Europe, and now Dubai, like, you have experienced such a wide range of perspectives. So, I was really just curious about what exactly the right moment you find that you want to make a change or like do more self-discovery, and how does diversity experience shape your leadership style and the way you connect with people?
Okay, those are three questions. So I'll try to answer them, but if I forget the good one, do remind me. So I think the first question around how do I know it's the right moment? I think so. Just to for a bit of context, for me, working, I between all of this, there is a parallel stream of your personal life. Balancing your professional and personal life will mean different things for different people. What enabled me to make these choices, I call them my board of advisors. Like, that's like your mentor, your coach, your closest friend, your deepest ally, and maybe also someone who constantly criticizes you. Like, having making those decisions, every time I've tried to make like a huge decision in my life, I've tried to hear from each one of those and then sit with myself and take that 360 degree of opinion and think, okay, have I thought through everything? And then just make a leap of faith, because you can never be ready for everything. It's like your gut has to tell you, is it the right moment? In my case, between all of this, I also got married and divorced. And like moved cities and countries with less than 5,000 quids in my account in from a very like from Germany, which is like very, very strong labor law oriented, to Amsterdam, which basically functions like US with 4 weeks notice, and setting up a new team. And though then at that moment making such a choice would have been aspirational, but I would have juggled too many balls. And I was already trying to figure things out. So that's one. The second, definitely that um, getting the right moment also means what is the most that that I need to be a better version of myself. Have I reached that? And like I think when I with my mentors and coaches, there has been a lot of steps that I had to go through to really be at a place when I decided Oxford. And this stays, I hope we are following the this stays in this room concept. But like, I have literally cried myself to sleep saying, okay, I want to learn more and I don't even know what my brain has starved. Like, I reached to that level of version of myself where it wouldn't help me to have more mentors or coaches, or it just needed a substantially different leap to unlock the next version of me. And at that moment, I had a Dutch passport, I had the funds, and I had a stable um, job, which I could, because this was a very extensive course. Like I was flying in every 3 weeks for a week, 10 days, and coming back with writing research papers. It's a very, very extensive course in terms of effort. Like I had zero social life for those 2 years. And doing that alongside a full-time job, like I had the dominoes stacked up before making that move. Does that answer your question, Sheen?
So, like, I think this the last one is about like how you shape your leadership style. Like,
All right. Thank you for reminding me of that one. So, leadership style. I think I do believe in there are different kinds of leaderships. There is inspirational leadership, there is servant style leadership. I have always said I am a 360-degree leader, what that means in my book. And I think I just try to be every step of the way a better version of that, which means um, I do like every single team that I have built, I've said I don't have all the answers. And maybe sometimes you will have better answers than I do. What I am accountable for is to give you the best environment which you will need to flourish, and count on my experience that I've had so far to sometimes question the direction that we are going to take. But at the end of the day, leadership for me hasn't meant that I have the best answers or I have all the answers, but we'll figure out along the journey. I think how this entire um, Oxford experience enabled one more thing, if I may, apart from my experience, was I think so I am on the spectrum, and I was vocal about supporting neurodiversity before Oxford, but I wasn't very vocal about um, so I have autism and ADHD. And I never used to speak vocally about this. What does it mean? What are some of the, um, let's say, support systems and accommodations to educate the people in the wider company? And what will that mean? I think it has if Oxford has enabled one more thing, it has been how to really bring the best out of individual brains which work differently. That is something I think definitely I've started vocalizing more about.
Yeah, thank you very much for your sharing. Diana?
I think you have a broad heart that embraces different voices. And that's what we need these days, to accept different voices and to realize that even if we're at the top position, but there are still a lot different angle and different voices that we can learn from it. So I really, really admire that.
For sure.
And then I have another question for you is that what key challenges did you face when transitioning from a corporate leadership role to becoming a female entrepreneur? And how did you overcome them?
Um, so I think the biggest mental barrier I had switching from corporate to entrepreneurship was the certainty of cash flow. I think that is some like being a salaried employee, and especially once you reach a leadership level, you have golden handcuffs, like having that kind of stability, and then saying, okay, but I'm going to now do all of this on my own. It is exciting, but it is scary. And I think, um, again, I'd go back to my board of advisors and I would say, okay, how am I going to make this less scary? What are some of the steps? Because I think the biggest flaw as humans we have is like we forget we are not alone. Like when we face a challenge, we think, "Oh, I need to deal with this," and I think um, they that even as a, I mean, it doesn't matter female leader or male leaders. I think men tend to do it more easily. We tend to take it upon us, like because as homemakers or like we've felt and grown as like individual accountables that like asking for help doesn't come easily, like, and we'll call it help, like not support. The moment like would Diane, would you support Chiying? And he'll be like, yes. Diane, do you want support from Chiying? That might be like maybe, you know, us
Yeah,
asking like for support should be like a second nature because as women we are nurturing by default. But so I think for me that's like the short answer that in entrepreneurship I just, for me, the moment I accepted like, okay, cash flow, how am I going to do that? How am I going to stack again the dominoes to counter and make sure like I have the least operational expenses, and this is where my initial anchor contracts will come from. The rest was really just listening to the community, to finding my tribe. Because, yeah, I'd moved countries before, but moving to Europe versus moving to Dubai is a completely different ballgame. But there's a huge alumni community here, but and finding slowly your tribe that takes time. And but one thing, like just be open to support, and you'll meet good and the bad, and you'll learn from both.
thank you. What do you think is the most different between like living in Europe and Dubai? Like to you, how do you feel the difference?
Well, for me, like I was 23 when I moved to Europe,
Okay.
and so I sort of like most of my adulthood has been there. There are different pros and cons. There's no like every country has its own, and every community will have its own benefits. I grew up in India, and by my stomach, I'm still Indian. I love Indian food, so that's like something where like if, as at the very simple basic level, if you can have the food you like and you can understand the culture, like that's immediately becomes easier to traverse. So in that sense, Dubai became easier to traverse. It took me a long time to understand the ways of Europe because now I eat meat, but when I moved to Germany at 23, I had not much life experience. I was a vegetarian, in those times where even McDonald's would not serve a vegetarian burger. And so like it was a bigger um, mountain to climb. But I think once I did settle in, one thing I did enjoy in Europe was I think there is a more, this is the social structure is more easy to question. It gives you the space to question the status quo more easily as compared to the East. Like, and maybe you can correct me because, like, at least growing up in India, there is a sense of hierarchy which needs to be respected. And that sometimes becomes a barrier in questioning. In Europe, if that was one thing I got more easily, it doesn't matter what the hierarchy is. Like, even as a young entrepreneur, you could walk in or write to the CEO and say, I think this is something we should do differently. And that's culturally more acceptable. So there, but also then it's a more individual um, decision or contribution culture, whereas like I think community wise in the East, like it's a more collective decision making in terms of team spirit. So it depends, like it's I wouldn't pick one over the other. Like for me, both have been my homes. Being in Dubai, one of the reasons I have chosen is because after 20 years, I wanted to be closer to my parents who live in Delhi, and it's a 2-hour flight from here.
Yeah, I
But
truly
also,
understand that. Yeah.
but also, I think it is the center of innovation at the moment globally. Like the number of expats, the top innovators from all over the world flying in because of the policies which government is incorporating to support and actually attract the talent. That does make it the innovation hub globally at the moment. So it is a bit of both.
It's a bit
So,
like Taiwan. Oh, sorry, Jenny.
okay, it's okay. I'm just wondering, like, since you have this kind of amazing journey, which is different from lots of people, what kind of guidance would you like to share with the young leaders who also want to shape cross-border careers in today's interconnected world?
I think um, just at this point, like I would say, take the leap of faith and have as broader of experience. Like stop trying to figure out how to get to. Okay, so if I were before I answer this, like I'd like to listen from the audience. Where do you see yourself? Like the typical like ice cream question. Where do you see yourself in next 10 years? And any volunteers?
Ruva, our Indian girls, are you there?
Oh, hello, Jenny. So, hello, ma'am. I am a girl from
Hello.
India, and as I see myself right now, I'm doing my master's, and I've just been to a very good conference to listen to many young leaders from around the world. So, as I see myself in 10 years, I want to make a change, especially for the people around me, because as I've noticed that people like you who inspire us, you everything that you talked about was so relatable to me because it's everything I face right now. Hierarchy, gender differences are everything that's very dominant in Indian industry. And so yeah, I want to make a change for me and for the people that will come after me. It's a change that I'm making.
Thank you. Anyone else wants to go?
Okay,
Not to put you, not, yeah, sure.
I can I can see myself surrounding like a world leader who has heart like you and many, many, many of you to surround, we can build together with a better world together with you guys. So I feel like that's my honor, and it's very heartwarming to, build this community together.
Thanks, Shivi. So I think now I wouldn't put anyone else on the spot, but now think where you were 10 years ago, and did you know you would land where you are today? And I think when you ask me where, like directionally, the advice that I have, I wouldn't I think stop trying to fit in or figure out where you will be and lead with purpose, and not just others, yourself. Discovering yourself and discovering your purpose sometimes does not come in a spark of a moment sitting or from a conversation. There's something this is something I think comes from um, being there, showing up every day with grit when it becomes challenging, when it becomes boring, when it becomes this is probably the most insane place, and I must be insane to be doing this right now. And once you go through that journey, but you keep showing up every day, and then every day that you step out, you also have this, again, I'll say my mentors, my coaches, my advisors, you will make sense of the direction that you're going and how you might need to tweak that a little bit or not. Sense of that purpose sometimes will look like, oh, I need a bigger paycheck because now I want to buy a home, because now I'm ready to settle. And some days it will look like that I want to enable more women leaders. So you'll create the first mentors group for women in the company. And some days it will look like, okay, what is it that I mean, now with AI, everything I know so far, I have no skills anymore. What new skills I need to learn to really unlock the next niche within my skill gap? Some days it will look like building the first business model which market has not seen yet. Different days it will look different, and there is no if there's a saying by the UAE, His Highness. He says, women, we don't need to empower women. Women are already born empowered. We need to give them the space to show up. And what I like about that is, the person I am, I don't want to be shown the way and said, hey, but look, here is your scene, or here, you can be stronger. Be told, it's almost patronizing. Every woman here, and also men, I think we are now in a generation where we need to create equal opportunities means slightly different. It doesn't mean anymore that, hey, we need to educate women for their rights, that yes, you are allowed to do this. I think we are there. What does that mean for the young leaders today? If you're still facing the same challenge as before, maybe we are looking at it wrong, because how I see it, so the society right now is not facing the challenges of, do women have rights? What we are facing is, do women have capital? And that's a different question to ask. If I pitch for a new company or a new project, and it will probably get different questions asked before I get the funding, that's the level of equity conversations we need to be having right now. And feel safe in our gut that if the questions that come to us are still about hey, I hope if you're joining the company, you're not going to get married, the same level of stereotypical questions, I would almost show up with humility and answer and ignore those questions, because we are past that. Once we start performing, the results will speak for themselves. Like, don't take it personally. If you are still facing those kind of questions, then you are already above, one step ahead. But don't let that demotivate you or question the environment, because change, if you want to change, you don't bring the change from outside. You have to be part of the system to change it from inside. And that means ignoring some of the questions and playing along, because those are also good people at heart. They just did not have the same exposure as you to get to where you are today. Once you see everyone as part of the ecosystem, change does not mean, do you want to build a new earth? Then maybe like we want to go to Mars like Elon Musk. Or if we are talking about change in the sense of who we all are, inclusivity means including everyone you think is not thinking correct according to your book, but they will once they understand the ethical leadership and the path that you're following. So I think just seeing it from the broader perspective and change as small step every day, and how to directionally find that purpose in small steps. Well, that was a deep question.
Thank you very much. I really love your words that like women already born with power, so we don't have to like empower them. We just need everyone to be part of the system and try to make a change, not build a new world for ourselves. So yeah, I don't know. I'm a little bit like be I'm a little bit moved by this and this let us turn back to your professional. Yeah, because we haven't just talked about the digital transformation and the innovation part yet. So I just want to ask you about like your work, like emphasize on trust by design. And so what is the key principle do you think are like young leaders or young entrepreneurs must understand about this? And what do you think like the digital transformation is important for us?
So, trust by design. Whenever you will build an ecosystem, whether it's technical, whether it's social, whether it's business, you have, like, if you're pitching, you're raising, you have to assume that people will doubt your intent, and they should. Because right now, if I look at like anything, pick a lipstick or pick a university or pick, you have million choices. How do I know that this is marketing or a real product? Whether that product is technical, whether that product is physical, anything. And I think every person will show up as this is the most authentic and the most, and we all see those options. And for me, trust by design means it is trust is not something that you will earn after you have launched. You won't launch until you have built trust as a feature within your ecosystem. That means going from, like, whether it's your fairness policy, whether it's your like transparency to the end user, how you will interact in every step should incorporate trust as a framework, as foundation. Because ethical is not just having the principles, trust is showing up with those principles. That's how you build that trust. And I think if you are able to build trust long term, those then you would have created a community of believers, a community of followers. A good example for sure is Apple. Like, they have so many times come up with models which you're like, okay, this is not a good one. but you would still show up for the next iPhone, not just because it's hyped, but because they've created a sense of subconscious trust that, okay, if this happened, then there must have been a good reason. Or think of a political leader, or think of a family member. Like, trust is what allows us to establish a relationship where you can learn and grow. Otherwise, it's like a continuous battle for recognition to prove yourself, which will not allow you to learn together with your sponsors, together with your customers. And trust for me is that basic. So yeah, like any whether it's my professional relationships or whether it's like launching, let's say, a new product for the customers, it's always been like, okay, how am I going to build that bridge which would allow us to communicate transparently? This is all we know. This we are still figuring out. And probably there's a 10% chance that we'll figure out something new. Giving yourself that room to be transparent without fear.
It reminds me of the book I read. It's called Start With Why by the author called Simon Sinek. I'm sure you know him, that he mentioned about Apple as well, that story. And so the concept is like, it's more like conveying a belief than just selling a product, right? But the first thing is that we need to know what we are actually selling and why. What do we want to give these buyers? Is that like the idea you've been talking about?
Yes, for sure. There's another one for the read. I'll put it in the comments later. I'm trying to remember her name, but the book is called Who Do We Trust? And um, the idea in Trust by Design is, if you look at transformations, right? Those are the moments where, on a large global scale, we are basically changing the basic human behavior. So if you look at when internet came, or when the first time there were phones, I'm not sure. Like, I feel old when I'm saying this because I'm trying to guess how many of them know the time before the mobile phones.
Okay.
But like, but that just means that, like, there were times when I was a child, we were sitting near the phones because, okay, 5 p.m., that's when like my aunt is going to call. Not like, okay, this is my mobile and I'm available 24/7. That was a huge leap for change in customer behavior. Internet, you could Google search. Now AI. So we go through these decades of transformation, which then affect whether it's digital or whether it's AI, which are changing things on a global scale. So the idea is, in this uncertain time, how do you lead with clarity and trust? Trust is what will allow you to create the clarity. And that will allow you to be um, to show up not just with conviction, to show up with respect, that okay, I will get what I see. There's nothing hidden, like, because there's also a meta way of doing things, like where you have, like, every time you consent to it, there are 10,000 asterisks what you have signed and accepted as terms and conditions. And I think what I'm trying to vouch for is, when I took Apple as an example, it was not just like, because they are really smart about showcasing the product. The one thing they do well, at least I think so, is every time they make a mistake, they have also vocally and publicly accepted that. And that's the trust I've been trying to talk about, which will allow us to go through the decades of transformation in a positive way, because we'll move forward no matter the tech we are talking about are amplifiers. Like Tina and I wrote an article about this, whether AI or not. And yes, we are going to, there's no question AI or not, there is AI. But the point is it's an amplifier. All of these transformations will just amplify whatever we feed in. And if we feed in and lead with trust, we'll make changes with positivity.
So as you mentioned AI, I'm quite curious that how do you see emerging technologies like AI and Web3 creating both opportunities and challenges, like for our young leaders and women entrepreneurs?
So I definitely think every innovation comes with pros and cons. The difference this time is it's exponentially fast. So if you club the speed and it's an amplifier, anything you will feed in, you will see immediate tangible results. If you feed in, say, so I'll give you some positive examples I saw on internet from 12 and 16-year-olds, where we are talking about AI and what it can do. And probably if I were to ask the most common AI, which is an LLM, it's not even a proper AI, is ChatGPT, which everyone would have used. What is it that, what's the maximum potential that you sit with to use it for? And there was this school kid, he had used one of the LLMs and the camera because he got phone on his 16th birthday. He combined the two to solve for earlier imaging of mouth cancer in men. And this is not someone who's studying medical. This is not someone because that's the level of power which LLMs and the tech that we have are going to put in hands of everyone. Now it's up to us in terms of young leaders, what kind of world do you want to build? And that's like the barrier to entry has been reduced and it's all left to your ethical imagination, whatever you want to achieve with it.
Thank you. And there's another thing that I've been thinking that, as AI has been so helpful for all of us, but sometimes even myself, I will be like wondering, even like not just the product or even an article I'm reading, is it really that authentic? Sometimes it's difficult if I want to build trust, but it's so hard in this generation, especially now, because there's so many things that you can just get a lot of tools from AI and you don't need to even think at all. So it's quite difficult for us to balance the authentic and creativity, especially you have this little time, but you want to do a lot of things. And sometimes AI does really help us with a lot of work. And I think that is what we young generation are facing this problem right now. Because my brother, he's still learning in high school, and I just know that there's a lot of lessons the teachers, they ask them to do homeworks through AI, like through ChatGPT. And I'm not sure if it's a good thing or not, but I don't know, like in your point, what do you think? How can we really balance this?
So here is how I think about it. And this is a very good question. I did have a round of discussion with my friends on this, let's say a debate. And actually, I'm the one who would say, why not? So a simple analogy, before calculators or scientific calculators, mathematical exams looked different. And you needed to know the tables. Now, when scientific calculators did not exist before my generation. My generation used it for the first time. And the questions that we were trying to solve became different and more complex. I did not need to remember and I still don't remember the table of 19. But the question is, do I need to have that? So I think there are two ways to think about it. One, definitely, should we be using AI? Yes. I think the question is a bit different. I think two-pronged. One, what should we use AI for? Because at some point it starts, if not done mindfully, it starts to look like Instagram scrolling. Endless questions, and you're not really moving the needle, because after a certain time it's just a dopamine effect for like, because it's giving you new information, but is that information useful? So I think for me the question would be, really, are your skills to use AI expanding as quickly as AI is expanding? Like, I try to learn every week because there are new versions every week. What is the difference? How is this impacting the different scale of things? And what new has it unlocked? Because we are still using LLMs, we are not in AGI. That's a different. The second is, when I did not learn the table of 19, I did learn something called mental math. Because why the generation before me did that was not just because you have to understand the why behind things. It was also because mental math sort of is an exercise for a part of your brain which is important, which would lose creativity. So I think what you're saying is, hey, but if I use this, I will lose the ability, or would not really, let's say, advance in my critical ability thinking. And that's true. If you do only this, that will be true. But if you're going to do this, how are you going to compensate for that? How are you going to use this more mindfully? And I think that's where the answer is not binary. Like, we are in an era where right now we have quantum computing coming. Pair that with AI. If we are going to not let kids use AI, then it's like, that's already a very non-equitable ground to start thinking. What we need to be teaching is how to use it mindfully. And while you're doing this, what is your mental gym to compensate for the creative critical thinking? So not use this like 24/7 to offload your thinking completely.
Oh, that's a really good point. Thank you.
Yeah, actually, I just heard my professor say about this AI stuff. She said that not in university, they also teach students to use AI to do their homework. But I think the main purpose is that she said if you want to do a case study correctly, you need to set up a correct prompt. You need to know the case well. If you don't want to be replaced by AI, like if you still want to develop your critical thinking, like I think it's still important to like let children know, like learn about what's right and wrong, learn about the media, like literacy, and then I think AI could be a really good tools for the modern society. And yeah, I think Jenny has
I
like
want to I want to actually address one of the comments in the chat from Ting Cheng. So I have a 9-year-old and a 12-year-old nephew. And we talk about AI. Like, I like to hear perspective from different generations, because I do agree that at their age, giving them this level of power where they don't have sense of what to filter, and it doesn't have a mode like YouTube that this is kids, you cannot put that level. It is definitely a point of discussion. But I would wonder, and I think we have a decade and we'll look back to say what was good or bad, but it's same as when internet came, and should kids have access to internet or not? And we don't ask that anymore. So I think the question is, for me, a bit different. I think we need to have more conversations with the kids around how do we, while I hope there'll be a version where we can filter the level of access for kids, which we don't have at the moment. But right now, the guidance, like how we do, how my brother has done with his kids, for example, is not giving them their own accounts. Everything, every activity that they do on that is either in school shared with the teacher and the parents, the login. So you can actually see their activity of interaction to sort of monitor, and then discuss. They also discuss on the dinner table, like, okay, how was it this week? What did you guys learn more? How do you think you need help with the prompts, or how should it be done differently? Sort of having that early teenage conversations about different topics, but now ethically about AI. And literally, I asked them, okay, what do you think about a AI controlled car versus me driving it? And they're like, but I would trust the AI. And I was like, why not me? And he's like, because you're human and you have emotions, so you can be upset, but I can trust that they won't. So I think they will have questions, and taking away the agency, I'm not sure how ready will they be for the world that is getting created, whether we give them access or not. And now that, I'm not trying to give an answer, I'm just trying to raise more questions, if I might.
Well, that's a really good point about this. I never really thought about that. We humans have emotions, and that does affect how we act and the impacts. Because we usually like get controlled by emotions, so that's a good thing to think about. And due to the time that we need to save a little time to open questions for the audience. And so before we officially close, we would love to hear from you all. Any final questions or reflections or key takeaways you would like to share with us? Like anyone?
Yes,
Yes, Tintin.
I have a question.
Please go ahead.
When resources are limited in startups, how do you decide what to prioritize and what to let go?
First, deciding what is the outcome. So more often than not, we'll always have more priorities than resources, because we are more ambitious, we are more creative, there'll be many more reasons, but there'll always be more priorities and what we can achieve than the resources. But I did this exercise with the team where I said, okay, you have $100 million. Now, I mean, this is a conceptual exercise, and you can solve, and you have enough resources for everything. Tell me how you're going to do it. And it'll surprise you, all the solutions that would come down to pitch, and all this, it was always like, you could never spend those 100 million. Always the answers were simple, and some of them were free. We didn't have to spend anything to solve them. So sometimes, like, it's just the limitation of the mind to say, hey, do we have enough? I think it's more around creative problem solving of how can we solve this if these are the resources we have. And one of the reasons, so when I took up the job in Nike, I actually took up the job to work in Converse instead of Nike after adidas, because what I wanted to challenge and learn more was to achieve this. So just for context, Converse is the #1 brand in terms of women's sports, but in terms of size, it's not even in the top 5 as compared to Adidas and Nike. So it's not in terms of brands. So the resources they have are much smaller to produce the same level of results. And I wanted to learn, after my career in Adidas, I knew how to make money work. if I have all the resources, how to achieve something, I learned that. Now I wanted to learn to do the same thing with less resources, and it'll surprise us what we will end up achieving if we just. I think it's a bit of reframing the context, reframing, and being creating more clarity for your goals. I think, and again, leaving not the people behind, because if you have the consent, not the consensus, you don't need to have agreement from everyone, but if you have in principle same direction and same purpose, what you can achieve as a collective. And when I say collective, it's not just your team, your company, or your immediate people. Like, we are on social media, like there's immense influence, which it's just the limitation of our mind, what we think is our direct resource. I think that's how I prioritize.
Thank you
Did I
for
answer
your
your question,
sharing.
Tinya?
Yes.
Is there anyone want to ask question or share something with us? Anyone? Don't be shy. No. If you're not going to ask, may I ask the last question? So, like, the Pretty, I want to ask you, like, because we often see people at the peak of success and shining with glory, but what do you think is the key after behind it that often goes unnoticed by most people? Like, behind all the success?
Well, go after learning the skills which are most relevant, like the niche. What is it that is not the hype? What is actually the real skill that you need to be learning? That continuous learning, the continuous discovery to be a better version of yourself, and finding the place where you will shine. It does not mean where you will get recognition. Like, some people call it calling, some people call it the right place at the right time. But I think that it's a very simple mathematics. The moment you know that in a room you have the best minds to challenge you, and you can contribute to that conversation because you feel engaged and because you can contribute to it with the least effort, it comes organically. You, like, to be better at that, you would not need to push yourself out of the bed. Like, the moment that chemical formula happens, that you know that that's the place where you need to just move forward with. So there's no real, like, for me, that's the formula. That has been my formula. It was not to, there have been times I've forgone promotions because I thought if I get promoted, I learned something which will be useless in a few years. And I took a lateral move because that is where I saw the next decade of industry was going to happen. But that meant 2 years of slow progression, and that gave a jump start. So yeah, really following and defining your path for the right reasons, the right whys, finding your whys and using them.
Priti, thank you so much for sharing your inspiring journey and thoughts with us today. And so, as we wrap up, is there one last message you would love to share with everyone here?
I think I would say one word, not one message, one word. Believe. I think in the days when nothing works, showing up with your belief is going to make all the difference. Believe in yourself, believe in the path that will show itself in its own time, and yeah, everything else will work out in its own time. You don't need to be somewhere, like there's no, I really like, I think probably this is what is the high note for me for this decade, like or in my 40s. I like that Vogue is now talking about top 50 under 50, top 60 under 60, and I love that there is no like, just yeah, just focus on learning and don't focus on the pressure.
Thank you so much. I'm so touched by your words. And now I warmly hand it back to our dear Changing to conclude the session.